Is the Adaptive Right-Sizing Building and Managing a Transportation System to Meet Evolving Needs Workshop. And I'm Greg Bishak. I'm a member of the Transportation Economic Development Standing Committee, which was one of the sponsors, AB 10, along with the Strategic Management Committee, ABC 10, and the Metropolitan Policy Planning and Processes Committee, ADA 20. And we're here with a very distinguished panel to deal with an interesting problem, which is, and I'm just reviewing the agenda, maybe most of you have probably already seen it, given the aging infrastructure, changing demand, unstable funding, decision makers that manage transportation systems have to figure out how to develop and sustain them, the appropriate size, function, and to meet the needs of the community. This workshop will be divided into two parts. One part will be a set of presentations that works through the evolution of this set of tools and the approach by NCHRP to develop this National Cooperative Highway Research Project on right-sizing, and the Federal Highway Administration study that likewise addresses this. And then after we get done with these presentations, we're going to have a workshop which involves scenarios and simulations and stakeholder engagement to see how these tools could be used and to look at sort of common problems and how these planning tools and concepts that the speakers will lay out could inform better decision making over time. So with that said, what I'm going to do in the interest of time, because we are kind of tight, we have a lot of content, and then we do want to get to the workshop part 2 session. I'm going to do a quick introduction of each of the speakers, and their order of presentations is laid out up there. Marissa Burritz is a principal economist at HDR. She has 14 years of experience in transportation economics and decision making, leading economic analysis in the area of transportation and freight planning, economic development, and project prioritization and finance. Marissa will tag team with Naomi Stein, who's a principal at EVP, and where her work focuses on the intersection between economic development and transportation. She helps organizations leverage economic information to make better decisions, such as prioritization and scenario planning. And Naomi was the project manager for this study, this NCHRP study 1914, the Right-Sizing study, which is the namesake of this particular workshop. Next, we have Jeff Harris of Metro Analytics, who has over 20 years of experience in transportation planning, research, and policy development, particularly related to multimodal transportation networks. Jeff has worked at the Utah Department of Transportation as a planning director and has 11 years of transit planning experience and 8 years of private sector experience. Next up, we have David Hurst, who has 19 years of experience helping maximize the efficiency and effectiveness of transportation at the local, state, and national level. He's a senior project manager with Metro Analytics, served on NCHRP Synthesis 508 data maintenance and governance practices, and is involved with TRB committee ABJ 20, statewide data and information systems. Chandler Duncan, our leading light, who we're awaiting. He's a dynamo, and he's the vice president of Metro Analytics with 24 years of research experience and consulting experience and transportation performance and economic analysis of transportation facilities, corridors, and programs. Been involved in numerous NCHRP studies and also the freight studies, and he was one of the lead analysts in both this and the predecessor research project, the synthesis study, which I'll talk about momentarily. And so he has a long legacy with this particular project. Mike Brown is a professional engineer, and he has a
he's hunting down.
Yes, indeed. He's also the founder of Metro Analytics, founded in 2009. Many of the staff participating in this particular event. He's served as principal investigator on other NCHRP studies, including the one now exploring the land use impacts and other general impacts of corridor management, and was involved in the NCHRP right-sizing study and designing it. I won't go into more detail in the interest of time. Let me just say that the general agenda is to go over these presentations and then move on into the workshop. And just to sort of set up the workshop, and it is going to be kind of on the fly. We have a script and so forth, but we do need to be able to integrate each of you insofar as you want to be involved in the scenario simulation. We'll identify stakeholders. We'll look at the tools, both to deal with long-term, near-term strategies, and how they apply to scenarios and the particular topics of interest that you would bring to this particular breakout group, and then we'll debrief. Now, finally, I'd like to say that the genesis of this right-sizing study goes back to an NCHRP synthesis study 480, published in 2015. I was involved with the Transportation Economic Development Committee writing the scope along with Christopher Mann for the committee. And it led to the synthesis study, which Chandler Duncan and Glenn Weisbrot were involved with developing. Looked at methods and tools. It has a very similar sort of focus, except its initial focus was more on the economic implications of transportation disinvestment. At the time, AASHTO and other transportation financing and regional financing officials had concern about unstable budgets, demographics, economic change, and so forth, and how this is leading to certain assets to be perhaps not well maintained, and perhaps they are not even synced up with the regional transportation needs, and so maybe these assets need to be thought about or disinvested in. That was the principal thought of this study. But what's interesting here is to see how that study spawned a dialogue which led to this right-sizing study. And what Naomi and Marissa are going to start off with is kind of a tag team presentation where they'll go back and forth to discuss these different, sort of they're separate but overlapping paradigms, the right-sizing and the disinvestment study. Federal Highway Administration has an interesting study, and then Naomi, as our principal on the right-sizing, is going to give us a nice, thorough introduction. And so our first two presenters will tag team, and I'll leave it at that, and you're in able hands now. Thank you.